when they did a profile last year. Look it up. They did a profile last year, big cover profile. And he said Delta Force was not at the Seattle riots running it. And he went and looked it up, and then saw interviews with the police chief, and where they all admitted they ran it. Guess who Joe Biggs, who worked aside special forces units in Afghanistan and Iraq, guess who he saw there and got photos and videos of, and we can show that? Delta Force. Clearly, Delta Force and then support units. Guys that have been medically retired who then support them. He saw Spec Ops operators, Delta Force, who he worked alongside in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially Afghanistan. He would, like, bring people to him and stuff. That's who he saw there. So I'm telling you, folks, Delta Force works directly for the president and was at Waco and were the ones that torched the building and shot the people. We had the flare footage. Later came out in Congress. Yeah, that stuff all came out. Just like CIA drug dealing came out in Congress, but nobody ever talks about that. And they were at the WTO again. The fact that you bring Delta Force into this, when they operate domestically, it's dirty. We had Delta Force, myself and Mike Hansen in San Antonio, at gunpoint, take away our footage of them when we were down there showing their drills. To be clear, they had a MP take it away from us at gunpoint while they sat there videotaping us. So you need to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that's real reporting that Joe Biggs and Sha'Carri Jackson have gotten. So you've got horrible thug life, thug culture garbage that's promoted to the media and hip-hop and the rest of it. We have a special Rick Ross interview coming up that we're going to premiere here today where he exposes the pipeline from hip-hop to prison. We're trying to stop this. That's wrong. That's terrible. That's horrible. Shooting at the police is just terrible. But at the same time, it's terrible they announced it at night, and who can deny that? We're going to skip this network break because the guys have not had any sleep yet. I want to get their report, let them get their stuff filed, and get some rest before tonight. And we'll have live streaming on InfoWars Nightly News tonight, 7 o'clock Central on, with what undoubtedly will be more rioting. And they're worried that it can break out in other areas. Most of Ferguson, most of the businesses were burned down. All sorts of racial stuff. Burn it down. If you're white, we're coming for you. Horrible as the globalists play us off against each other. Let's go to former Staff Sergeant, veteran Joe Biggs, and that's important because he can militarily report on what he saw there and also seeing the special ops operators that he believes were probably with Delta Force, because that's who they use domestically. They had North Carolina plates, by the way, from Bragg, and that's where they're located. Joe Biggs, tell us overall what you saw, what you witnessed. I'm not trying to puff you up here. It's just you guys are so humble. If you'd have put out the report that you sat there in the gunfire when everybody else ran, and we have footage, that's national news. It's national news that CNN and MSNBC people ran. And they were way behind you guys cowering. So all I'm saying is great job. Really, I mean, people stand there when a hurricane comes in and it's national news. You know, guys blowing around. You're there right in the middle of it as eyewitnesses. That's newsworthy. So great job, Joe Biggs. Give us your feel. You just heard me from, 500, 600 miles away give you my take sitting here in Austin. What is your take on what you saw and what I said?
I mean, there's not a lot of words that can explain the site in person of what happened here. And also, just to give you guys a background of where we are right now, I'm on West Florissant Avenue in Ferguson, and right behind me, this is the McDonald's. Over to my left, the windows were busted out everywhere in this area, but the building was not burned down. But this is a huge complex behind me. You can see all the way through this building to the other side. This is a very wide building. It was burnt to the ground. The transformers in the area that feed power to the buildings exploded last night. We got some really good footage, and I took a picture just right at the right time. I mean, last night was complete and total chaos. I probably counted somewhere over 1,000 rounds being fired on the other side of the police, I should say. It was one of the most heartbreaking things I saw last night were the firefighters out here at the beginning of the night trying to put these fires out and then being told they had to be pulled back because the fire truck was taking fire. They were shooting at the fire truck, and you could see the firefighters being pulled back.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Obama has whitewashed this.
because they couldn't do their job and they wanted to save a business and they weren't allowed to because there was these people out there firing at them and they were just trying to save another business in the community.
Well, Joe, that's a great example of whitewash. Obama says don't focus on the negative. This is happening. And people say, well, ignore Obama. Well, they said, you know, don't cover Ebola, so the media stopped covering it, even though we know they're covering up cases clearly here in the U.S. Only Drudge is picking up our stories where we show that there's a cover-up going on. So the sky's the limit. But, yeah, there's the headline right there. Fire truck shot. Terrorist attempt to kill firefighters. I mean, here's the thing. I'm against police shooting reporters with rubber bullets for no reason, but I'm also against them standing down and letting people shoot at firefighters. I mean, let me tell you something. I'm glad I didn't go up there because people start shooting at me, I'm going to get really upset. I mean, who are these people? Do we have any idea who's shooting at the firefighters?
At one point last night, Alex, it was a crazy sight, and I took an epic photo. I think it's going to be used for years on end. It was right in front of the Season's Greeting sign on South Florissant, where the police department is. There were almost 1,000 police officers lined up in the street there. You know, after they had burnt that police vehicle, Jakari Jackson and I were able to scale a building and get on the roof and get some really neat footage overhead of that car. And then we decided to pull out and come down here on West Florissant. And when we got out here, all there were fire trucks out here trying to put out these flames, and they had no protection at the time. There was no one out here.
That's a major system. You're saying the police did not protect the firefighters?
No, not for a long time. I mean, by the time the cops got here, they had already made the fire trucks pull back, and the buildings were essentially just left to burn to the ground. And as you can see, this is not the only building on this road that was burnt to the ground. There are multiple other buildings. The Sam's Meat Market was on fire. There was a rental storage, you rent per storage unit, burnt to the ground. And other places, I heard a church just right up the street on Canfield. Someone was shot through the window of their car, and they found the dead body sitting in the car in the same complex where Michael Brown was shot. So last night was complete and total chaos. My mind was blown by the amount of violence and how bad things went so quickly. I mean, it broke my heart to see these people just sitting here and, where are they going to go now? You can't even drive on the street now, Alex. You can't even go out here because it's completely ruined and devastated. Almost everyone out here lost their business. The amount that the people save up to put into this community to help out, to supply people with hardware, with the burgers, with everything out here, laundry places, all gone. Where are they going to go now? It just broke my heart to see this. Last night was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I mean, far surpassed anything I've ever seen in combat.
Elaborate on that.
Just the lack of the humanity. I mean, it was just out of control. There was no thought about life. No one cared. People were popping off shots for no reason. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but they stopped the airspace last night. They shut it down. People who were flying in, by the time I got home last night, I turned on the local Fox. They were at the St. Louis airport. There was a lady getting ready to pick up her son who was flying in from Denver. They were 5 minutes out and told that they had to turn around and go back to Denver. They stopped flights coming in last night because people were shooting up in the air and they thought that it could hit a plane. It was out of control.
Well, that's right.
Cared about anything.
KMOV reports St. Louis-bound flights rerouted amid protests. And you guys got some incredible footage of the burning and the looting that was going on. Joe, let me ask you this, because I want to get this straight. You're saying, as an expert on this, because you've been on at least 3 tours of heavy combat, are you saying you heard at least 1,000 shots in the direction of the police and firefighters?
Well, I don't know what direction they were in at every time. At one point, I did hear a snap, like one went right by me, and that's when I got behind a building for a minute. But other than that, I think a lot of them, they were directed at some of the fire trucks when I first got here on West Florissant. And then, the police officers reported last night, too, in the press conference around 2 a.m., that a lot of them, a few police officers were injured. One was shot pretty bad in the arm and was taken to the hospital. But a lot of it, I think, was just up in the air. And apparently at one person who was now dead sitting in a car. So, like I said, last night was out of control. And I was listening to the broadcast before I came on, and you were talking about how a lot of these mainstream media corporations were essentially just running for their lives, and it happened. I mean, we were sitting out there, Jakari Jackson and I were high-fiving each other because these guys were fleeing and running back. They're in a staging area way back here with the National Guard around them and cops patrolling around them, and they're talking about what's going on out here like they have any
the footage you got, you and Jakari. We were just showing some of the footage you guys got. It looks like something out of a science fiction movie.
Oh, I mean, like I said earlier when I opened the show, there's no words that can explain to actually be here and see it. That video, the video will never captivate what happened here. The smell, the aroma, everything burning.
So why was it wilder than some of those battles you were in that Esquire and Rolling Stone wrote about, where there were explosions all around you for hours and fighter jets bombing, targets, and some of the biggest battles in Afghanistan that you were in? They got
because I've got 30 men that I trust with my life. Last night it was me and Jakari, and then everyone else you don't know who they are.
So it was the sheer anarchy. It was the chaos that made it so weird.
Yeah, I mean, it was like me and him against the world almost. I mean, it was two of us, and there were thousands of people out here, and gunfire going off everywhere. I mean, at one point I felt like it was just the craziest thing I'd ever witnessed. It was just mind-blowing. I mean, when you guys see the report that's coming up right now, I think it's up now, and they should be getting it. You guys have to play this. I mean, it is amazing footage of what happened.
What should the headline be? Exclusive, frontline Ferguson riot footage, or I mean, what headline should we give this video?
InfoWars. I'm trying to think of a good way to. You need really good words for this because the footage is just so epic.
Epic Ferguson race war footage?
Yeah, there you go.
Something like that. And again, folks, we just have total transparency. I mean, look at Joe driving while there's burning buildings beside him. This is crazy. I'm going to make the call right now, Joe. I don't want you guys back out there tonight. I don't want to have you guys shot in the head like the person they killed.
Alex, you know that it's just going to be hard for me to do something like that. I'm the kind of guy that I don't run from it. I have to run towards it.
No, I understand. I know it's exciting, but I don't need to get one of you guys shot, for heaven's sake.
Oh, no, we're good. I mean, we work together great out here. I mean, there was no issues last night. We stayed within maybe 2 arms length apart at the most. He was down filming really good stuff, and I was talking to the nightly news crew back at the studio. I mean, we maintained a good distance, and at any time, if things got too
out of control, you had bullets flying by your head, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we got footage of you hiding behind the armored vehicle. I mean, the police are hiding behind the armored vehicle, and then you guys are out there with the bullets flying by. That is just crazy. You used the word, though, that 1,000 shots you would estimate is what you heard.
I mean, at one point in a 5-minute span, I counted about 100 in my head. And we were out here for 5 hours, 6 hours. So, do the math. I mean, at one point, I think for about an hour and a half, every few seconds you heard pop, 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 pop. And then one time it was like, pop, pop, pop. It was nonstop. It's bad when the cops are pulling up a blockade of vehicles and then hiding behind it. And then they're not even worried about people walking up behind them at that point. They were just hiding. But I do have to say this. Last night, the police did, from what I saw, a pretty great job. They did not act the way they did back in August. They did not attack journalists. We had one issue with them not letting us come back to our vehicle, but that didn't last long. I told them I would get over here to the vehicle, and I did because that's what I do. But, other than that, they weren't attacking us. They weren't shooting at us. They weren't harassing us in any way. I had people listening to the police scanners, and they were being told over the police scanners to leave the media alone, to let them have free reign and coverage over whatever they wanted. So the cops didn't bother us at all. So I have to give them props on that. I didn't see any excessive force last night like we saw in August, mainly after listening to the 2 o'clock in the morning press brief by the chief. He said that, we were just going to sit back and treat this like a sporting event or a festival. He said we were just going to sit back and, not use excessive force because, they took so much heat from their actions in August so that they felt like last night they had to sit back to prove a point that if they're not out there running around and actually being proactive, that the city's going to burn to the ground.
But I was about to say, that's the PSYOP. Use excessive force up front.
Tonight's going to be 10 times worse, I guarantee it. The amount of National Guard that's going to be in the area, the helicopters in the air, the police, the agents, everything. Tonight will be crazy.
All right, incredible job. We have the best reporters with the most courage standing there as police fire tear gas and rubber bullets over them at people shooting at them with live ammo from firearms, bouncing off armored vehicles. This is sensationally out of control. Stay with us. We're going to talk to Jakari.